Hello everyone. Today I would like to share 4 scary werewolf or dogman as some people call them with you stories before we begin. Make sure you like and subscribe, and also let me know where in the world are you watching from, and what time. Spoiler alert, the last story is by far the best. Back in 2016, I had an experience that truly scarred me for life. One night, I'd like to say it was somewhere in the middle of autumn, I had been planning a sleepover with my friends. Let's just call them Sarah, Caitlin, and Joanna. I think it was for my birthday, or for one of my friends' birthdays, and we were going to have it at my house. The day before the sleepover, I spent all day making sure everything in my house was clean and neat for my friends. When I was outside sweeping the deck, I looked at the miles of forest ahead of me. Then I got an idea. I thought that it would be an absolutely amazing idea for me, Sarah, Caitlin, and Joanna, to, during the day, explore the woods behind my house. So the day came, and I was waiting by the front door for the girls to arrive. I waited for probably 5 minutes, before Caitlin's mom drove into our driveway. I instantly ran up and hugged Caitlin, and excitedly told her about my plan for us to explore the forest. She happily agreed, and we went inside, waiting for the others. A little while later, my other 2 friends arrived, and we all sat on the couch. First, we watched a movie and did some karaoke, probably normal for us being 13-year-olds home alone. Then I decided we should all go on our adventure. Joanna and I packed us some bags of necessities for our little hike, while Caitlin and Sarah messed around. It was normal for them. As we set off into the woods, I noticed that the air had grown a lot chillier since I was last out. I asked my friends, "Hey guys, do you think we should just go back inside? It's getting cold," but they all just wanted some fresh air, so they disagreed. I hesitantly accepted their answers, and led the way. After some time of walking, I saw something dart in my peripheral vision. My eyes glanced over to where I saw it, but before I could see anything, Sarah nudged me, and pointed out a bald eagle in a tree. As soon as giving her a reaction, I looked back over to where I saw the movement, but found nothing out of the ordinary. About an hour later, I saw the movement again. So once again, looked over to it, but this time, unlike the last, I actually saw something. Running off into a thick layer of trees, was a hairy dog-looking creature. At first I thought it had just been a coyote, but then as it lifted itself onto its 2 legs like a person, I knew I was mistaken. The thing looked to be about 6 to 7 feet tall, and seemed severely distorted. I screamed and pointed it out to my friends, but it was too late. The creature was gone. They were all questioning me, obviously not believing what I saw. A little while later, after kind of shrugging the event off, me and my friends decided to head back to my house, as it was starting to get dark. We walked for probably 5 minutes before we heard a stick snapping behind us. I knew my friends heard it too, as it was too loud to have not, and they flinched. We all looked back, not expecting much, but there stood the creature I'd seen earlier. It was staring at us hungrily with its beady yellow eyes, its wide, gaping mouth, full of razor-sharp teeth. This time, we all screamed, running for our lives. I ran until my legs felt like they were going to fall off. I quickly turned to look if the creature was still there, and to my surprise, it wasn't. A little while after this happened to me, I searched up what this thing could potentially be, and the only things I could really find were werewolf and dogman. Luckily, me and my friends are all still alive to this day, and will have a story to share with our future children and families. I just know that that was a sleepover that we'll never forget. It was in the middle of January, and my friend, let's call him Jay, called me about wanting to go camping for the weekend. I sighed, and told him, I'm not much of a camper, but he insisted it'll be fun, and had a good point about me trying new things. He got me there. I said fine, and he arranged on what day and time we'll head off. Fast forward a few days, I was helping Jay load up his truck, and soon we were on our way. During the drive, Jay mentioned that we're not going to a normal camping area, rather a secret area he's been going to since last year. At first I didn't like the idea, but at the same time preferred the quality bro time with Jay since it has been a while since I last talked to him, so I obliged. After an hour has passed, We made it to this secret camp area, and well-colored me impressed. It was a nice small opening with trees surrounding it. Cozy if you ask me. After me and Jay set up camp, we spent the rest of the day catching up and cooking up some canned soup for dinner. Evening came, and it was getting dark pretty quick. I had to go number one, and excused myself. I walked in the forest to find a good spot to do my business. I was smart enough to not go too far. For reference, I made sure to at least see the light of the fire from the campsite. After I found a good spot, I did my business. Although I had a weird feeling of being watched. No sense of fear or dread either. It's like a calming vibe. Very calming vibe at that. It's hard to explain. I shrugged it off, and finished with my business. As I turned around to start heading back to camp, I caught sight of 2 big glowing blue eyes looking at me from a close-by tree. It surprised me, made me jump a bit even, but I stayed calm. No sense of panic or fear, but a feeling of curiosity and awe. The eyes blinked once, until it started to move slowly towards me. Slowly a silhouette of a large wolf-like thing came into view from what little light the moon gave off. I thought it was a wolf, but not quite that. It was crawling on all fours, sniffing at me, looking very curious. It was until I started to study this large wolf-like creature. It was about maybe 5 to 6 feet tall, darkish gray fur with some white, slender but fairly muscular, and hands that end with sharp claws. I also noticed that this thing was female, due to 2 bumps on its chest. She inched closer and started to sniff my coat and cocked her head almost curiously. I was amazed at what I'm looking at, but it didn't last long. My friend was calling out for me, and that caused this female wolf creature to look at the direction of my friend and back at me. She stood up a bit, and licked my head before bounding off in the dark. I was still amazed, and trying to process on what I saw before Jay found me, asking me if everything's alright. I said yay, but didn't tell him on what I saw. For the rest of the trip, I kept looking out in the forest in hope of seeing this creature again, but it never happened. Shame, but regardless, I would not recommend assuming anything like that to be always friendly, so be careful out there, camp junkies. This is from a while ago. My cousin Mark, he called me and told me that one of his buddies had been hurt on a hunting trip in Michigan. He asked me to come out and watch him, while he and the rest went out to try and find the animal that actually hurt him. I drove out to his hunting cabin on the northern tip of Michigan. When I arrived, he was waiting for me on the front yard, completely decked out in Kevlar, a .50 caliber hunting rifle, 2 .45 caliber pistols, 3 Bowie knives, a boot knife in each of his boots, a riot shield and a riot helmet. 2 of his other buddies, the ones that weren't hurt, were decked out in full riot gear, with old MF4 rifles that they got from a military surplus store. I grabbed my old MF1 Garand rifle that I had gotten from my great-grandfather before he passed away, and his old medic bag, went inside the house into the living room, and sat down in a recliner on the deck next to Andy, who had been hurt. He was completely wrapped from head to toe in white wrap, as well as a stretchy kind of bandage. I could tell he was really hurt. I just couldn't tell how badly. As the 3 of them ran into the woods, I leaned back and put my old MF1 Garand across my lap, put my feet on the railing and waited. Soon I started to hear weird sounds. There was a guttural roar coming from the woods. What looked like a giant black shape was ghosting in between the trees. Then out of nowhere come the shouts. I heard Mark and his 2 other buddies scream in terror, and that's when I heard their guns start to go off. It sounded like a war zone. I knew Andy could easily defend himself if I moved him inside, so I grabbed him, put him in a wheelchair, and rolled him inside. I handed him one of my old 45s. I ran up onto the deck, jumped over the railing and ran into the woods, loading my M1, and getting ready for a fight. I ran until I entered a clearing. There in the clearing was one of Mark's buddies on the ground, bleeding badly. I ran up to him, sliding down beside him, and started the patch. What wounds with what medicine I had. All around me were gunshots, screams, howls, and roars. I couldn't tell which way Mark and the other one of his buddy had gone. I tried to find Mark as soon as I could, I ran straight left once I was sure that the wounded buddy was safe and high enough up in a tree. Instead of finding Mark, I found his other buddy, head torn clean off his shoulders. I knew there was nothing I could do, so I just covered him with branches and covered him with a blanket to try and keep animals from seeing him and smelling him. That's what I heard the ping of Mark's MF1. I ran into the direction of the M1's ping, pulling out my .45 cuz I was pretty sure it was going to be a very close fight, meaning I wasn't going to be able to use my rifle. I burst out of the trees, and right there in front of me was a hulking, black shape that looked like a werewolf from all those old TV movies that I had watched. I took aim and fired 4 rounds right into its back. It gave a grunt, turned growled right at. That's what I saw, its teeth staying red. I looked behind it, and I saw Mark crawling away, one of his buoys broken. I knew this fight could probably be my last, but if I could give Mark even a little bit of time to get his wounded buddy, and get out of the forest to Andy, call the authorities, and get out of there, I was going to take it. I read my pistol aimed, and let loose hail bullets. The beast gave a terrifying howl straight up into the night sky. All I can see were its eyes, as they glowed red in the night. I charged, still firing. As I fired my last bullet, I dropped my gun, and drew one of my knives. I slashed as I spun to the right, and I could feel blood leap from the beast's chest onto my face. I spawned back around, jumped and stabbed the knife down, as hard as I could. I felt the knife go into something. I couldn't see anything due to the blood, and how dark it was, but I know that I hit it, and let out a terrifying screech of pain and rage. It threw me from its back, and ran deep into the woods. I drew my M1, and started firing at its retreating form. Upon hearing the ping of my M1, I heard Mark open fire. With his M1 I reloaded my pistol, grabbed Mark, and started dragging him backwards as he fired. When his M1 pinged, I started firing with my pistol. We made it back to his wounded buddy. I put my pistol away, grabbed him and started pulling him back. We got back to the house where Andy had already called the police and the park rangers. When I pulled them out of the forest, still firing their weapons, the police ran up and started firing their weapons into the night. They obviously knew what we were shooting. I didn't know then and there if that thing was gone for good, but as we went back, civilization was driving my Humvee down the road, following the ambulance all the way to the hospital, when all of a sudden, bursting out of the woods and onto the road in front of me, was the very same black creature. Most people say slam on the brake. Why did the opposite? I slammed on the gas and ran that thing over. When I knocked it over, I turned around and I parked my car right on top of it. I got out, pulled out my pistol, and unloaded 4 magazines straight into its skull point blank. A police car pulled up beside me, saw me shooting it in the head. Enemy, his shotgun, and I blew the thing's head off. Point blank with a 12-gauge shotgun, filled with buckshot. We hauled the thing off to the vet. The vet then cut it open to find out what it had been eating. That's when we noticed dog tags. They were old dog tags. They were covered in rust. When we traced the dog tag, you find out that they come my cemetery near the hospital. We returned the dog tags to the family of the person that lost them. That's my story. I've sworn to avenge my cousin's dead friend, no matter the cost. The next time I see one of those dogmen in Michigan, I'm going to kill it. I'm going to make sure that it serves as a message to all the others that you mess with humans, you unlock our true rage, and we can be truly terrifying when we want to be. My story begins with the fact that my destination for the summer holiday has been the same for 14 years now, Ardèche, southern France. We always stay at a campsite near an ancient little village on a mountain. It is one of those villages that is slowly turning into a ghost town because most people moved to the city. The people there are very kind, but one thing that always amazed me is that many of them still believe in the existence of werewolves, or loup-garou, as they are called in French. This belief likely stems from the infamous werewolf trials that took place in France during the 17th century. Over 40,000 people were executed under accusations of being werewolves. I enjoy visiting small villages like the one near our campsite. I often go there to take pictures of the beautiful old buildings, but I was especially intrigued when I learned that even today, the people of the countryside still believe that these supernatural creatures exist and roam the woods at night. Curious, I decided to ask one of the villagers if this was actually true. The man I spoke to was very kind at first, but when I asked him if and why people here still believed in werewolves, his expression changed to one of fear. He glanced around uneasily and told me that we should not discuss such things outside on the street. He led me to his backyard, and after bringing us both something to drink, he lowered his voice and confided that this town had been hiding a strange secret since the Second World War. He told me that this village was part of a werewolf's territory, and that it might even live within the village itself. The beast had never attacked a person, but around the full moon, a sinister howling could be heard coming from the nearby woods. Occasionally, livestock would go missing or be found slaughtered. Since this area was part of a massive national park, encountering wildlife like deer or boar near the roads or homes was not uncommon. However, the man claimed that all the elderly villagers knew the town's secret. Some rumors even suggested that the werewolf had been seen or heard inside the village itself. As I listened to the man's story, I considered the idea of walking through the village at night and exploring the edge of the woods. Even though I believed in werewolves, I was skeptical that a single creature had been terrorizing the town since the Second World War. If that were true, then either the werewolf had passed its curse to someone else over the years, or it was part of a werewolf bloodline. When the man finished his story, I thanked him for his time and the drink, and made my way back to the campsite. That same night, I grabbed a flashlight, told my parents I was going for a late-night walk, and headed toward the village. The moon was full, and as I walked through the silent streets, I heard the distant howl of a wolf. I immediately stopped to listen, my senses on high alert. For a few minutes, everything was silent. Then, another howl echoed through the moonlit night, this time louder and closer. The sound was unnatural, sending a chill through my spine. Wolves do not live in the wild in France, except for a few in the Pyrenees, so this could not have been an ordinary wolf. My anxiety grew as the howling seemed to be getting closer. I consider myself a big, strong guy, muscular, and usually fearless, but in that moment, I was terrified. The only thing keeping me from running back to the campsite was my curiosity. I had heard the loup-garou, but I wanted to see it with my own eyes. Not even 5 minutes later, a long, eerie shadow stretched across the road in front of me. My breath caught as I looked up. A dark figure crouched on a rooftop, its silhouette outlined by the moonlight. It had pointed ears, a long snout, and a hunched, furry body. The creature was enormous, easily as tall as a Siberian tiger, even in a crouched position. For a few moments, it simply stared at me. Then, without warning, it leaped from the roof, landing on the road just 50 meters away. I finally got a good look at the werewolf. It had the head of a wolf, but its teeth were larger, its muzzle wider. Its eyes glowed an icy blue, and its body was an eerie fusion of human and wolf. Broad shoulders, powerful limbs, and massive paws tipped with razor-sharp claws. It looked like it could stand upright, but preferred to stay on all fours. Its deep brown fur bristled in the moonlight, and when it let out a low, guttural snarl, my instincts screamed at me to run. But I did not. I remembered that turning my back on a wild animal and running could provoke an attack. So instead, I began walking backward, keeping my eyes locked on the werewolf, trying to appear fearless. The beast took a slow step forward, snarling. I quickened my pace, but since I was moving downhill, I had to watch my footing carefully. The werewolf kept following, closing the distance between us with unsettling ease. Panic surged through me when I realized it had gained at least 5 meters on me. I picked up my pace even more, but made sure not to lose sight of it. Relief washed over me as I neared the village's edge. But then a horrifying thought struck me. What if the werewolf had been waiting for me to leave the village, where there were fewer people to hear me scream? However, another thought kept me from losing my mind. If the werewolf had wanted to kill me, I would already be dead. It had ample opportunities to attack, yet it only followed me, snarling. Perhaps I had unknowingly trespassed into its territory, and it viewed me as a threat. As soon as I stepped past the last row of buildings at the village's edge, the werewolf stopped. It simply stood there, watching me. It never crossed the boundary. It dawned on me then, where the village ended, the werewolf's territory began. If I had been a werewolf myself, it likely would have either chased me away or fought me. I continued backing away until I was nearly 150 meters down the road. Only when I was at a safe distance did the beast finally turn and disappear back into the village. That was when I ran. I sprinted the entire 2.5 miles back to the campsite, constantly glancing over my shoulder to make sure I was not being followed. By the time I reached our tent, I was panting as though I had run a marathon. My parents immediately asked why I had come back in such a hurry. My father would never believe me, so I only told my mother what had happened. To my surprise, she admitted that she had also heard a chilling howl coming from the woods across the river. Even my skeptical father begrudgingly admitted that he had heard it too. I barely slept that night. The next morning, I returned to the village to find the man I had spoken to the day before. When he opened his door, I told him that I had a story to share. He led me once again to his backyard, and I recounted everything that had happened the night before. He listened carefully, his face unreadable, and when I finished, he met my gaze and said something that made my blood run cold. "I saw you. I was following you that night."